Welcome to the STLK in the UTA Jazz podcast. I'm Conjo. This is Paul. We are extremely excited to be here today. It is game day. The Jazz face off against the Sacramento Kings in the regular season home opener as well. So we're super excited about that. Honestly, Paul, it has been 199 days since we have seen our beloved Utah Jazz play basketball.
It's been a long time. It's been a long time coming. I'm really excited. Really excited.
You were texting me the other day. This feels like, Christmas morning when we were 7 years old.
Well, the days leading up to it felt like Christmas, like the lead up to Christmas. It now feels like I'm waiting for my siblings to wake up to open the presents. Tonight can't come soon enough.
I'm losing sleep at night thinking about this game. Just the complete excitement around a new Jazz team, a new Jazz roster, a new Jazz culture,
jerseys,
new everything.
New jerseys, beautiful purple jerseys.
Repping our old throwback jerseys today, which we only get to see a couple of times this year. So love that they're coming out strong with that to absolutely set the tone for this team.
At the Delta Center. Don't let us forget.
The renowned Delta Center.
With the retro court tonight, which, again, can't be more excited about.
I'm sure all the fans are just as excited as us, going back to the Delta Center, like our parents once knew it as. And honestly, my dad has called it the Delta Center my whole life.
And why not?
He got all confused when we went Energy Solutions and Vivint Smart Home. And so going back to the Delta Center, not only his home for him, but it's cool for, the younger generation as well. So honestly, 199 days. It has been since April 9th, 2023 since we have seen our Utah Jazz play.
Well, even further, if you look at when's the last time we had starters play basketball? It's been a long time, man.
Like we said, thousands of times already, I am just absolutely excited for this game tonight. So,
Merry Christmas, Conjo.
Thank you.
We made it.
We made it.
We made it.
Obviously this team is completely different. There has been lots of changes. Danny Ainge has been up to something. Ryan Smith, Will Hardy, everybody is up to something to making this Jazz team that much more exciting for this year to come and that much more, competitive. Obviously we are in a position where we want to, get better each year, especially with, getting new draft picks, excelling that way and having tons in the future. But a lot of off-season moves and a lot of notable off-season moves. And so would love to turn the time over to you, Paul, to kind of enlighten us on not only the offseason moves that the Jazz have made this, offseason so far, but the biggest key notable ones that you think will have the biggest impact on this upcoming season.
The biggest notable thing that the Jazz have going for them right now is we did not lose a player from last year that played over 10 minutes per game. The biggest offseason addition, I believe, Conjo, is John Collins.
Absolutely.
He's a 16 points per game on his career. 8 rebounds and 1.5 assists while averaging a block per game, which is really impressive. He's coming off a year where he had his worst statistical category in every single major stat except for minutes per game. So he's coming off a down year, but what that means to us is he's ready to explode. He's going to be 26 this year, going into his 7th year. This is when players typically explode.
Yeah.
Last night, I believe, or it might have been yesterday, he said he wants to have a Hall of Fame career. And a lot of people were kind of making fun of him on Twitter, which I didn't love because he has the ability to do that. But if he's going to have a Hall of Fame career, this is the year where he breaks out.
I'm all about the confidence.
Yeah, why not? Right?
I think that statistic, of last season is overlooked. We traded him for Rudy Gay and a 2nd round pick. When I saw that, I said, feels like free.
It felt free.
It felt free to me.
Yes.
And so by getting that kind of caliber player, he's obviously had, some issues in Atlanta, due to organization and, different team players and things. And so to be able to go and get a guy like John Collins for that price, I was absolutely astounded by, absolutely loved. And something that's going to be is also overlooked is he's going to play the 3 position, which is going to move Lauri Markkanen into the 4,
right?
Which we saw a lot of him play the 3 last year.
Well, here's the thing. Both of them can shoot lights out. John Collins on his career, 35% from 3, which is really good, especially for his size. 55% from just the field, which is really, really good. So to have him and Lauri, who both can shoot the rock at your 3-4 interchangeable, this Jazz team just got way more versatile.
John Collins is a very electric player as well. We have seen him dunk over almost everybody in the league. He goes out there and, can absolutely put down anything he wants to.
I think he's the most athletic player on this team.
Yeah, I am extremely excited excited to see, how John Collins plays out. And I think we're going to see a breakout year from him.
Yeah, something that also is cool to keep a note on, or not even a note, but it was something worth mentioning, is back in January of 2021, where those stories came out, like, oh, John Collins, Trae Young, they're butting heads in the locker room. There were talks at some point, like, well, who do the Hawks keep? Obviously, they kept Trae Young. John Collins didn't develop how they wanted him to. But that just speaks to the potential this guy has, where at one point he was getting recognition as, is this our franchise guy? And again, it hasn't turned out that way yet for him, but he has that potential.
Mm-hmm. Fun fact about John Collins, actually born in Layton, Utah. Yes. So most Jazz fans are trying to claim him, if you didn't know that, and say that he is a Utah native. I mean, seems like a stretch to me, but I'll absolutely take it. His dad was actually in the Air Force. And so, growing up, he actually was born right there by Hill Air Force Base in Layton, Utah. So
yeah, if you look it up on Wikipedia, it says Utah. That's all that matters.
That's all that matters. If there's a Utah stamp on that Wikipedia page, I'll count it as even, just growing up here, even though there's really no growing up, just a birthplace.
Just a birth and then immediately moved. This takes us into our next key addition of the offseason. One of our rookies that we drafted, who I think is going to be stellar for us this year, Keontae George.
I was hoping you'd say Keontae George. I absolutely love him.
Obsessed with him, dare I say, in a healthy way. He's a one and done player coming from Baylor, where he was a Big 12 freshman of the year. If you don't know much about the Big 12 and you're listening to this, I'm sure you're going to learn a lot about it. An electric conference for basketball, if not the best conference last year. So for him to win freshman of the year and be on first team all freshman, incredible. He didn't shoot the ball great last year, but if you've heard us before, we don't really care about the college shooting stats.
Yeah, of course.
It's a little skewed because the spacing isn't there. He averaged 15 points a game, 5 rebounds, which I thought was really cool. And that's something to keep an eye out on his rookie year. But 3 assists as well. Again, I think that number is going to go up. A lot of his teammates couldn't hit open shots. But I think he's going to be our best rookie this year, at least.
I mean, grabbing him, we had the 9th pick, the 16th pick, and the 28th pick. Getting him at number 16 was an absolute steal.
Yes.
Steal of the draft, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. I think getting a caliber player like that at 16, when he was actually, I think, number 10 on the Jazz's draft board.
Yes.
So we were able to still grab him after drafting Taylor Hendricks. We have seen him in preseason, which we'll touch here in a second, absolutely excel, expand his 3-point range. Mm-hmm. You really move the floor and, set that pace and tone for, actually passing the rock around.
Yes.
He has absolutely excelled in a lot of ways. And his confidence kind of reminds me of a Dame Lillard when he was first drafted. He came in and did a press conference saying that he, obviously wants to win Rookie of the Year, which sounds cliche because everybody wants to win Rookie of the Year, essentially. Right? But it's that confidence of I will win Rookie of the Year, which Keontae George has. And I absolutely think he's going to make a big impact on this team and really set the tone. And I've really, really liked, what we've seen from him so far.
So he was coming out of high school as the number 3 recruit in his class, wow, which is really, really cool. He played at IMG Academy, which is one of the most prestigious schools in the nation for developing both basketball and football players. Coming out of high school, there were talks like this is a bona fide top 10 pick for sure. He dealt with some injuries last year at Baylor, out of his control, obviously. And this was a loaded draft class. So he obviously fell out of the lottery. I remember seeing tweets, and correct me if I'm wrong, and obviously this is all he said, they said, but there were talks when the Jazz had the number 9 pick. Do we take George or do we take Hendricks here? And the fact that George fell all the way to 16, they got both of their guys.
Unbelievable.
It's really exciting. But that's that for Keontae George. I want to go into preseason about him, but his last year at Baylor, he looked fantastic and a great scorer, and I'm really excited to see how he facilitates the ball going into this year as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Paul. That was awesome. Those are our notable off-season moves for the Jazz here. Honestly, I want to transition this over to the preseason. The Jazz actually went 3-2. It doesn't say a whole lot, but something I was really excited to see was Will Hardy took these preseason games, honestly, quite seriously. Mm-hmm. He experienced and, put in different lineups that we probably will see tonight on opening night. And I liked seeing those rotations and actually giving these players the actual reps in preseason to get them ready for the regular season. They spent and they did their training actually in Hawaii. They were able to build culture. I bet that was an awesome time.
Yeah.
While it's starting to get cold a little bit. But on top of that, being able to give these guys real-time reps in preseason when a lot of people actually take advantage of that, I think goes a really long way. And I think that's going to, really give them fresh legs and, experience together, which I'm really excited about. And so these starting lineups consisted of, Taylor Horton Tucker, a mix of Sexton and Clarkson at the 2, which, we don't see Colin Sexton at the 2 very much.
No.
So I thought that was super interesting. Then obviously John Collins, Lowry Markkanen, Walker Kessler. Our front court is absolutely solid. We'll see that consistently. Where I don't know what we'll see is in the guard range. I mean, we have Taylor Horton Tucker, who played absolutely fantastic. He was scoring the rock as much as possible. We had Sexton come in and just do his thing, which is defensive effort, be a dog on offense. But then we also have Keontae George, who was excelling, throwing up 17 points here and there. But then also someone that isn't talked about is Chris Dunn. Mm-hmm. I mean, Chris Dunn actually recently had his contract guaranteed for the rest of the season. And he is a player that can go out and get you 19 and 5 on any given night, which is overlooked. No one's talking about that.
No one's talking about it.
No one's talking about that.
And here's the thing with our guard group, if you will, is I feel like, just like you said, each one has this skill set that doesn't really compare to the next one. It's really different. I'm really excited to see what Will Hardy does with these guards, because we have Sexton, who, I don't know if you know this, was one of the top isolation players after the All-Star break last year.
Oh, he loves it.
Which is really impressive, because a lot of people that you talk to are like, oh, Sexton kind of just hucks up shots. I don't think that's true at all. He's really, really talented getting the ball in the
loves
hoop.
to drive to the rack.
And he's really good at it. THT, who's 22, 23 years old. He's still really young. He's developing. But then, like you said, Chris Dunn, who's kind of becoming a starter in this league right before our eyes. The Jazz have him for $2 million this year. And here's the thing. He has a chip on his shoulder. He was almost out of the league for a little bit. He's playing for another contract this year. I think out of all of these guards, if I had to take a guess, I would bet Chris Dunn is our starter going forward. But again, they're all so good. I'm not really sure. We could flip a coin and just say, you're starting tonight.
And that's what makes it fun. I mean, I don't know who's going to start at the 1 tonight. Mm-mm. And, obviously what to expect moving forward is we will see John Collins, Lowry and Walker Kessler.
Those are set, right? Like those are our 3, 4, 5.
Set. And we know that Clarkson will probably come off the bench as our pronounced 6th man. Mm-hmm. And then Kelly Olynyk as well will probably be our 7th man, in that rotation with the big guys. Mm-hmm. So something that is not as clear is what is that rotation going to look like with our point guards. And I am excited to see that. And like you said, each skill set is different. So I'm sure Will Hardy, the mastermind that he is, has a bunch of different rotations that we'll see that's going to filter in as many people as possible. I mean, we even have Ochai, who is a great developing player. A great developing player that, is in that 2 position. Mm-hmm. Could play the 3, mainly that 2 position. That's going to be working in with Clarkson and with, if Sexton's going to be seen playing the 2 a little bit. But I think he'll get a ton of minutes as well.
What's interesting about Ochai, before we made the John Collins trade, and even after, I think, if we have any guard 2 through, not even guard, but any star player we have to guard 2 through 4, I think he's our guy. Like if we're going up against Devin Booker and he has a game like he did last night where he's like going for 30 plus, I think we put Ochai on him, which is going to really throw a wrench in the rotation, because I don't think, and I could be wrong, I don't think Dunn is going to guard him nearly as well. THT isn't going to guard him. I really don't think Keontae George is going to guard him as well as Ochai could. So we could see Ochai out of nowhere just start averaging 30 plus minutes a night.
Absolutely.
And he has the skill to do it. That's the thing. I think he's probably the 2nd most athletic guy on the team. But from a defensive standpoint, I think out of all the guards we just listed, Ochai is the best defensive guard.
And we've mentioned Taylor Hendricks a couple times today. Mm-hmm. And something that I thought was interesting about Taylor Hendricks is obviously he's dealt with a little bit of injuries, but he actually has had less playing time so far than rookies 1 through 41. That's honestly unheard of when there's not a, significant season-ending injury. Why do you think, why do you think that is happening? He's kind of getting slow to the rotations. Mm-hmm. And 2, why do you think that the Jazz drafted a guy like Taylor Hendricks at number 9? Lots of other notable draft picks behind him. Why do you think that he was, the vision that the Jazz saw for the future?
So there's a few different angles you could look at this, and I'm going to take the angle of we think he's a great player. We're going to develop him. And we are already set at that position for now. Kelly Olynyk, Walker Kessler, our whole entire front court. John Collins, honestly, is a player comp I like for Hendricks, but I don't think the Jazz need his services right this minute. And with that, to your minutes point, I'm going to name a few players. You tell me what you think these players have in common, okay? John Stockton, Rudy Gobert, Gordon Hayward. So those are all Jazz men. Jimmy Butler, Chris Middleton, Bam Adebayo. Any idea?
Well, I like where you're going with this one because these are all big names.
Huge names.
I mean, these are no light names floating around. I mean, these are all all-star caliber players. So I'm hoping it has to do something with their playing time because those are big names. And if Taylor Hendricks could turn out like one of those guys, I mean, I'm sure we would all be ecstatic.
So every single one of those players averaged less than 20 minutes per game their rookie year and then turned out to be all-stars.
Wow.
And 20 minutes might sound like a lot. It's not. I went through the list. The stat was way harder to find than you would have thought because most rookies that turn into stars play more than 20 minutes. But this is to say it's okay to take it slow. I mean, you looked at him. I think it was his first preseason game he played. I wouldn't say he looked lost, but he looked slower, almost hesitant, which is fine. He's a really young kid that's coming into a really high competitive league. I think it's okay that the Jazz are going to take their time with this. And frankly, they don't need to rush it at all. We're in a position where we're going to go all in this year, and I can touch on that in a minute. But we don't need him to come in and average 25 minutes, 18 points, shoot 40% from three. But I'll tell you what, if the Jazz expected that from him early, there's a high chance of it not going well. But the fact that they're taking it slow and we're going to let this guy develop behind really, really solid veterans, I think this is going to pay dividends down the line for us.
Absolutely. I mean, we have tons, to put it lightly, of draft picks moving forward. And so I think by not rushing some of these rookies, which a lot of teams tend to do, and it doesn't pan out as well, throwing them into a system and to experience that they honestly have never had before, I think is going to go a long way, ease them into it, give them the experience and the honestly mentorship that they need going forward will probably set the tone. Obviously hoping to set the tone for as they progress, in a couple of years, and then they end up doing the same for, our tens and tens of draft picks that we have here in the near future.
Yeah, it's almost you want to teach him to learn how to be taught so he can teach others to learn how to be taught as well. I mean, you look at Derek Favors, he was traded to Utah when he was in Brooklyn or New Jersey at the time. He even said it on a podcast, I want to say last week, where he really didn't have anyone mentoring him. He gets traded to Utah. His whole career changes.
Absolutely.
And that really goes to show it does matter in this league to be able to sit behind a veteran, even maybe not even sit, but at a point where you want to learn, he's in a position where he needs to learn. I think this is going to work out really well for the Jazz.
And that's why I love Will Hardy. I mean, he's a young coach. And I think guys like this in the direction that the Jazz are heading with such a young core and such young players is having a coach that they can relate to like that and just absolutely, have that relationship with, but also trust on that mentorship. And Will Hardy is an absolutely great mentor, an absolutely great coach. And I think he's going to set the tone for the Jazz in these coming years. And I thought that he was the absolutely most perfect fit for this team.
So one thing I wanted to go back to, I said the Jazz are going all in this year. And when I say all in, I don't mean they're going to try to win a championship this year. I think everyone in the organization knows that's probably not realistic unless we get a big trade.
Would it be sweet? Sure. Absolutely.
Bring the parade to Salt Lake.
Absolutely. Are we expecting it? No, but
no. So the Las Vegas over under for the Utah Jazz this year is 35.5 wins. The Utah Jazz do not own their first round draft pick unless it's in the top 10, which means if you're in the top 10, you missed out on the play in this year. I don't think the Jazz are going to try to miss that. We just made a trade for John Collins. We're showing that we're going to be really, really patient with Taylor Hendricks. There is no reason in the world for the Utah Jazz to take it slow this year and not try to win as many games as possible. We saw last year, Conjo, the Jazz kind of started pulling starters, almost trying to lose a couple games.
Yeah.
And a lot of people kind of got on them for it. They're like, oh,
are we tanking? Are we not kind of thing?
Yeah, we were stuck in the middle. I'm here to say the Utah Jazz will not be resting any starters this year at any point.
I'm all about that.
That's that for you. I just don't think there's any reason to. We're not going to fall in the fringe of the 11th and 12th pick. I know for a fact. We're going to go all in and try to make a top 6 seed, I think.
I mean, tonight, Sacramento Kings, they are a great young team. I mean, the light the beam thing they had going last year was absolutely awesome. And they are a franchise that honestly, the Jazz are probably wanting to honestly look like a model to. You know, they want to model the Sacramento Kings and kind of that franchise that they've built, you know, the young core players, you know, made a few trades and kind of honestly the energy and the culture that they've created. The Jazz are absolutely trying to create as well. What to expect tonight? You know, I actually think on the defensive end, we are going to play great against their big men like, you know, Sabonis. I think he will have trouble, you know, scoring the ball on Lowry Markkanen and Walker Kessler. I mean, those are two people that it can't be easy to score on them. I think De'Aaron Fox will probably have a day. He is a great, you know, quick player. And I think just still figuring out where our point guard situation is, I think De'Aaron Fox will probably take advantage of that. But I think key points of the game is to stop De'Aaron Fox because I think Sabonis will naturally have a slower game. And so I think, you know, key point of the game is if we can stop De'Aaron Fox and slow his pace down, not necessarily his scoring ability because he's going to put the ball in the hoop, but if we can slow his pace down, I think the Jazz will take an absolutely big win here. And I think starting the season 1-0 against a team like Sacramento is going to be big.
So the Jazz are underdogs tonight at home by a point. If you look,
why am I not surprised?
It's okay. It's whatever. If you look at last year, the Utah Jazz opener, do you remember what happened?
Enlighten me.
The Utah Jazz blew out the eventual NBA champions, Denver Nuggets, in Denver. The Jazz know how to come prepared. That was Will Hardy's first game ever. The Jazz will be prepared tonight. I don't think they lose this game. And in fact, I think they win by double digits. So similar to what you were alluding
Paul's
to.
take double digits, write it down.
I think if I had to choose a window, we're winning the game between 10 to 15 points. And it's over halfway through the fourth quarter when we're up 25, and then we pull the starters.
Yeah, I mean,
I think it's going to be a blowout.
I'm excited to see, you know, obviously, like we've been saying, this is a different team. This is a different culture. This is a different setting. This is a different year. And I am extremely excited to see how this 23-24 season, you know, takes off.
Sorry, I'm just replaying this in my head. I didn't think I would live to see the day where you say that we need to emulate the Sacramento Kings.
I mean, it sounds like blasphemy.
It does. And if you didn't watch basketball last year, you're looking at us
you're
like
confused.
we're crazy.
I mean, this is a team that hadn't made the playoffs since around like 2000.
Some of the worst ownership at some point. Like it was.
Yeah, I mean, that was the place where players went to die.
Yes,
their careers
Jimmer went there to die his rookie year.
Exactly. So it has had a bad rep, but their team last year was special. And I think if the Jazz can do something similar and honestly catch people off guard, because that's what the Sacramento Kings did. They caught people off guard. And I'd love for the Jazz to do exactly that. Because I mean, obviously our expectations are extremely high. And I obviously a biased fan think the absolute opposite, and I could not be more excited for this season.
If the Jazz did what the Kings did last year, which is go into the first round of the playoffs with home court advantage and take, I believe, last year it was the reigning champs, Golden State Warriors, to 7 games. The season's a win.
Season's a win. So expect a win tonight. I'm stamping it. Paul stamped it by double digits.
Double digits.
We're super excited. You know, actually catch us at the game tonight. You know, naturally, we got to be there. They're giving out purple shirts. We're going to be giving out shirts of our own.
One thing I want to touch on before we go. This is a headline to watch all season. I want to throw this out before opening night.
Throw it in.
Jaden McDaniels of the Minnesota Timberwolves just signed a massive contract extension, which if you saw the headlines of it, you're like, good for him.
I mean, I'm seeing lots of massive contract extensions. Zach Collins, who's only played 11 games the last 2 seasons, gets a pretty big bag for what he's been doing.
Did you see the picture they posted of him?
I tried not to.
It was kind of funny. It looked like he passed away almost. It was like of him with like wings on for some reason. It wasn't the best post by the Spurs. But so Jaden McDaniels signs that extension. If you just look at the face value of it, you're like, good for him. He's a really good young player. This will put Minnesota in the luxury tax starting next year, unless they trade of one of the 4 players, which is Jaden McDaniels, who they're not going to trade. They just signed him.
Nope.
Anthony Edwards, Karl Anthony Towns, or Rudy Gobert. Out of those 4 players, if you had to guess, you'd probably say Karl Anthony Towns.
I mean, no one's taken on, respectfully, Rudy Gobert's contract, and Ant looks like someone that they'd rather set their franchise around versus Karl Anthony Towns.
Correct. So Utah owns 5 either picks or pick swaps in the first round going forward for Minnesota. If this doesn't go good, if this contract doesn't turn into what they want it to, those picks hold even more value than what we were expecting, which is really exciting.
Well, that reminds me of Donovan too. If I stand corrected, I mean, our picks for the Cleveland Cavaliers are for when Donovan Mitchell's contract ends. And, obviously everyone's saying he's not going to be a Cavalier and most likely will be New York Knick. But the fact that Danny Ainge was able to go out there and strategically, use these picks and utilize them in years that he's banking on these teams being bad, so it benefits the Jazz the most, is an absolute mastermind of a steal there. I can't believe, everyone was like, oh, why do we need picks in 2028 and 2029? And that is exactly why we have picks in 2028
I'm surprised
and
Cleveland
2029.
gave it up too. They must have been really confident going into that trade that Donovan would stay. Bill Simmons, who's one of the most reputable sources in the NBA, is already saying that it's no kept secret that Donovan does not want to be there long term, which if you're a Jazz fan, you're like, oh, I feel like I've seen this movie before, which is hard. But Donovan's had his sights set on either Miami or New York for a very long time. And just a side piece, I think Damian Lillard going to Milwaukee makes this pick even more valuable from Cleveland.
Absolutely.
Or I guess the handful of picks we have really.
Handful. And like we said, this all results back to, this season for the Jazz, but also this season is replifying the future as well. This is all about, the new pace that we're going to set the tone at moving forward. Excited for the season, excited for tonight's game. Most importantly, I know, we're all excited about that. This has been STLK in the UTA Jazz podcast. Catch us every day. Every single day we'll be throwing out content about our beloved Utah Jazz. I'm Conjo. This is Paul. Thanks for listening.